Hello back. Today we're going to continue our look into pliers wrenches, and this time we are going to look at the Austrian made GEDORE pliers, and we're going to look at how hard the jaws are, the maximum opening size of the jaws with both the handles closed and the handles open. We're going to take a look at how well they can handle, or if we can get to 100 foot-pounds. We're going to see the jaw size, the width, the depth. We're going to see how heavy they are, and we're going to load these things and see how much the tool flexes. And we'll take a look at the jaws under a microscope. So let's get into it. First thing's going to be pretty easy. We're going to take a look at how this tool operates, and this is actually kind of unique because while a lot of them you see you just push the button and go, this one, if the handle's closed all the way, you actually can't push the button in. You have to have it open just a little bit, and then you can push the handle in. And you can actually slide it. Once you push it in, you can adjust it without touching it, and you spin it to the spot that you want it, and it'll set. So that's an interesting thing, and all they did, and maybe we could take a look at this more in the microscope, but they keyed the back of this where the button goes through, and that is what keeps it from operating. So if it's open to a point, you can't accidentally push the button, but unfortunately where you can accidentally push it, well, all the way closed you can't, and right where the handles are starting to get to the end of the usable range is where you can push it. I'd prefer to see it more so out here is where the button can get pushed, but then you can't accidentally push it. I don't know, that's interesting. So an interesting take on it. Pushing the button doesn't require a ton of force, but it does have a little bit more resistance than some of the others that we looked at. Moving ahead into looking at our keyway, we like to measure that on each one, and this one is 5/16. Yep, definitely 5/16. Let's see what our jaw width is. Our jaw width towards the tip is 5/16. Our fixed jaw is also 5/16. Our overall jaw depth, let's call that 1 3/8 of flat usable space. A little bit less on the movable jaw, but that top jaw, you get 1 3/8 out of it. Alright, so let's see how far this thing can open. A lot of these advertise 2-inch. And this one, with the handles closed, you are right at 1 15/16. And with the handles full open, we're at 2 1/8. Now, of course, that 2 1/8 isn't overly useful when the handles are way open like this. You don't have any leverage at all. So I would say at the 2-inch, that's where your handles would be, and that's doable, but realistically you're probably going to want the handles pretty close to that inch. And let's revise that and say we're 1 7/8 now that that's snapped in. So you probably get that 1 15/16 to 1 7/8 is where you're really going to be to get it right. Okay, another fun thing we like to test here is how much weight are you going to lug around in your tool bag if you get a pair of these, and you are going to be right at 18.9 ounces. Okay, next we like to see how hard the jaws are, and that's really important to know because if you're working with hardened fasteners or something like that, can you expect to damage the pliers when you're wrenching on something, or will it be able to hold up and not take any damage? Now we'll take another look at that because we're going to see if we can get 100 foot-pounds of force on this on a hardened hex 5/8 socket very shortly. But let's see how hard this is. And we're going to start with the 55 HRC. And we are scratching in on the fixed jaw. And we are scratching in on the movable jaw, but we aren't scratching in hard. Let's see if the 50 skates. Yeah, 50 skating. I would say this is in between the 50 and 55, a little lower than what we saw with the Knipex. The Knipex, the 55 just barely makes a mark on them. So these are a high 55. The 60 definitely digs in, but the 55 is just right there. So the Knipex has been one of the hardest ones that we've seen so far. This is a little below a 55, but I think it's closer, probably like a 53, somewhere in there. Okay, next up we'll go over to the other vise and we'll check out if we can get to 100 foot-pounds and if we'll do any damage to these jaws with the 5/8 hex. Okay, we are over at the vise with the GEDORE and we are going to see if we can get to 100 foot-pounds without the tool slipping off. Okay, the handles were starting to open up on us, but I do think we got there. We got to 103 foot-pounds. Okay, we are back from the vise at the microscope, and let's see what we had happen over there. And we did make some marking on this tool. You will take notice on these jaws, you'll see a little bit of a divot right here. And on the fixed jaw, or the movable jaw, we don't really see anything on that side. Top of the fixed jaw, a little bit of a mark. And the bottom, there we have really no mark whatsoever. Now let's take a look at what we see on the movable jaw. Not a whole lot of damage really, and that's been somewhat consistent with what we've seen on these tools. The movable jaw has been a little harder. If I drag the scale over that, I just kind of feel a smooth spot where we had that force. I don't feel any notching or anything like that. But when we get to the upper jaw, there is a very clear, and I can feel that, a very clear notch. It's not super deep, but you can see it's there, and you can see where you could feel that with the scale. Has it ruined the tool? I don't think so. But at 100 foot-pounds, if you're cranking that hard on this, I'd say you can expect to see some marking on the tool. Now this pair was probably starting to get to the line where I was starting to lose grip of the handles. A lot of these, as you push, this handle seems to lock the tool into place. I was starting to feel this handle open up on me and I was having to squeeze the tool together. So I would say 100 foot-pounds is probably going to be near the max on this unless you can really squeeze them together. That's just an observation. I was noticing it to start open. Now the only other one that we had a problem with was this vice grip pair, and these I could only get to like 74 foot-pounds without it opening. So all of the other pairs we tested, we did successfully get 100 foot-pounds to. This is included in that, but this was starting to show signs of trouble. Let's just take a quick look at the rest of the tool. It's got this, I think a lot of the European manufacturers are using this matte chrome, and that's what they've done here with the tool. It's got this finish. It's made very well. The craftsmanship is quite nice. There's your button. There's your marking. That is, I'm going to say it's forged in the tool. There's your part number. The handles, they're kind of like a foamy rubber, if we want to go with that as a word. Backside, you can see a little bit more of the lever mechanism and the way everything kind of slides. Your jaws, tip of the jaw nicely ground to a point. Not a sharp point, but nothing clumsy either. Here's your made in Austria. And this is what I was talking to about the adjusting mechanism. If you look, it's keyed so that the handle has to be in that spot in order to push the button up and down, and then you can adjust the tool. It's very hard to hold this in focus and operate that, but there you go. Now once the tool's pushed, you can slide this, and I found over on the 5/8 hex we were able to kind of slide this up and close the handle, and it set itself kind of loosely where it needed to be. I opened it up one more notch, but maybe we could take a look at that on something else then. But that's kind of how that mechanism works. Interesting take on it. Okay, so we're back, and we're over at the load cell vise with the GEDORE. So we're going to do our first test, which is putting our pliers right at the tip of the load cell so that everything is just right at the tip of everything, and we should be able to see how much flex we get. So we're going to take this to 5. We're right at 2 3/4 and 43. Yep, 2 3/4. It's a little hard to get it exact here, because there you can see we have it. But alright. 5, and now we're going to go right to 75. See what kind of force we get. Okay, so we're at 75, it's tapering off. Let's go with that. 520, 2 3/16 for the first set. And now we can come back, and we're going to slide this all the way to the back, which we've found that we have a little bit more leverage with it all the way back. So now we can go ahead, go to 5. Overshot a little bit, but 55. That's still 2 3/4. Let's go to 75. Oh yeah, it's going to have more on it. Alright, that's going to settle in. 650. and 2 3/8. So that might be one of the more significant differences between everything. Okay, so that was some interesting testing, and I believe this GEDORE or however you want to say it, this set of pliers is pretty much a right-on contender with the Knipex as far as what we saw for force values. But as far as what we saw for the jaw and holding on to things, I think the Knipex still takes it. But it's very interesting that we were getting very even force values with the GEDORE for what we were seeing within the fudge factor of our rig here. So that's very interesting. Now this is quite a bit more money than the Knipex, so take that into consideration as well. We also had less flex on this pair of pliers than we did on any of the others that we tested so far. So this is a pretty rigid set of pliers. The Knipex wasn't really that bad as far as the flex that it had. Jaw size is all pretty equal between the two pliers. Max jaw size is the same as well. So everything is pretty even between these. You can notice that the Knipex is just, it seems like it's got a little bit more refinement in the way it's machined and everything like that. But I don't think that's really a big deal other than the fact that this is less than this. I would not say this is a bad pair of pliers. I think it's tested very well. Pretty good testing, really, for what it is and what we were able to get out of it. It's about even with what we saw here as far as the force test. Now, we did see that the jaw marked up a little bit more than the Knipex, so I'd say the Knipex is a little bit harder than these, and this was starting to slip off at 100 foot-pounds, where the Knipex still had a really good bite. So I don't think force is everything, though this is a good contender, and it flexed less. That was a good point for this pair. The Knipex being able to hold on to the workpiece and having a harder jaw, I think gets the Knipex a better overall purchase, especially since the price is less. Aside from those comparisons, I think this is a pretty neat pair of pliers. It's got a really unique setting, or a way of setting the jaw, because you can take this and set something arbitrarily in it and just squeeze the jaw and you'll have it. So if you're oversized or undersized, let's say, and you have your handles way open, you can just squeeze your handles until it sets itself. So I think that's a pretty neat feature that gives you a somewhat all-around ability to set it relatively quickly. Now, I would personally like to have it like one setting lower, and you have a nice closed grip. But that might not always work into place. You can at least get close with that, and maybe for you and how you use the tool, it might work out just right. So I thought that was kind of unique, a neat way of setting up the tool. They have the rubberized handle grips that a lot of these others have. It doesn't have the overmolded plastic grips like we saw on the SK the other week. These have those kind of nicer grips that are jammed on there, or even the Ulsa. The Ulsa had kind of a fancier grip version as well, which gives you more surface area on where you grab. Overall, I wouldn't take too much away from these because of that. I think that's just one of those things that, you know, I come to expect it. That's your standard pliers grip. So I wouldn't really complain about that. That's decent. Jaw fitment overall, if you close them up, they fit nicely. There's not like a buck tooth thing going on or anything like that. They're not crooked. They're nice and straight. This is a very, very nicely made tool. There's nothing really that I could complain about on that. This is a good quality tool. So I hope this was interesting. Let me know in the comments below if you have a pair of these, or if you're thinking about getting a pair, or if you had them and you didn't like them, and why you didn't like them. I think the conversation on all this stuff is really interesting, and it's just kind of playing around here in the shop and taking a look at various types of specs that we can pull out of these things, the hardness, how far they open up, and how much force we can get out of them, all those types of things. I think it's kind of fun to play around with and to look at that stuff just for the fun of it, to compare and see, are we going to say definitively which pair of pliers is the best? It's subjective, but at the end of it, hopefully we can kind of figure out, for money spent, what gets you the best all-around tool for serviceability, durability, force exerted, sizes, that you can work with, all of those things. I think that's all kind of interesting, and we'll take a look at a few more pliers yet. I think we have a bunch more that we can look at, so this will continue going on. If there's some that you'd like to see, let me know in the comments below. If we have a pair, we'll do a video on them. As always, I like to hear any comments you may have about these. These are made in Austria, which is something new for me. I don't think I have any other Austrian-made pliers. So this is kind of new, seeing how their manufacturing looks, and I'm pretty impressed with it, to be honest with you. I don't think it's not absolutely over the moon or anything like that, but it is a pretty nice quality tool. It's definitely a higher quality tool than what this SK was, and it's a higher quality tool than what these Icon were, and it's a higher quality tool than what we saw even with this Klein. All of these, I would say, aren't as good of a quality tool as this, but that's all something that this also costs quite a bit more. You can buy 2 of the Kleins or 2 of the Icons, if you get a deal on it, 2 of the SKs for what you can buy 1 of these. So those are all things that come into consideration as well. So let me know what you think of these. I think they're pretty nice. I don't know that I'd run out and get a pair if I didn't have anything. There's probably other models that I would go to, namely the Knipex, but if I got a deal on these, I would definitely jump at them. Their retail value right now is around $80 at time of filming for this video, so I don't think I'd get these for that. But if you could get a deal on them, I'd go for them. They're pretty nice. So as always, thanks for watching, and have a great day.